Everyone in this small Texas town knows about Thomas Brown.
There's not one person in this community that doesn't think about this.
After more than a year of investigations and searches, the mystery surrounding the 6-foot senior class president's disappearance has only deepened.
My theory personally is that he was taken by force. By whom, I don't know.
You believe he was murdered?
Yes, I do.
By someone he knew?
I believe so, yes.
With few clues uncovered and key evidence kept concealed,
The case does not need to be open to the public.
a community is left living in fear, and a mother is left frustrated.
At this point, I know more about the Las Vegas shooter than I do about my own son and his disappearance.
When the class of 2017 graduated from Canadian High School, they left an empty seat for the class president.
At this time, please pause with us as we acknowledge Thomas Brown.
Instead of a diploma and a round of applause,
As we continue to hold out hope that Tom will come back to us.
for Thomas Brown, there was a moment of silence.
In my mind, I always talk about him in present tense, as if he is still here. It's hard, but because I don't have anything conclusive that tells me that he's not alive, that's how I'm going to talk about him until I know for sure.
But Penny Meek hasn't seen her son for more than a year. It was the night before Thanksgiving. Thomas was going out for the night. His brother Tucker was home visiting from college.
I said, what are you doing, when you get home? Let's watch a movie or something, because that's what we did.
Thomas agreed, then headed out to meet friends Christian Webb and Caleb King. Like most small towns, there isn't much for teens to do at night in Canadian Texas.
We just rode around and listened to music pretty much all night, talking. It was pretty just boring night in Canadian.
We went out to the Wagon Bridge and walked around, walked to one end and back.
A little after 11, they were ready to call it a night. So Christian headed back to the middle school where the boys had parked their cars. What was the final words from Thomas that night?
We'd made plans to go out to Christian's Thanksgiving night. Those were the final parting words, was I'll see you tomorrow.
According to the county sheriff, at 11:26, a school security camera captures Thomas pulling out the parking lot in his red Dodge Durango. He heads west for about a half mile, then stops for gas on 2nd Street, where he fills up with his mom's debit card.
I have a schoolmate who came by the house a day or two later and said that he saw him getting gas there.
A half hour later, Penny knew something was wrong.
Thomas never misses curfew.
And that's when my mom came in and said, have you heard from Tom? And I said, no, not in a couple hours.
Then, something even more out of character.
I had texted him, his brother had texted him, and he didn't respond. His messages showed as read, but no response.
Minutes later, their texts stopped going through.
I said, there's no way your brother would turn his phone off.
So Penny and Tucker take off in separate vehicles to search. About an hour later, she called his friends. No one knew where he could be. She then called the sheriff's department.
It was nothing out of the ordinary that night when we didn't have a senior in high school, 18-year-old, not show up on curfew.
Thomas wasn't an average high school senior. He was elected class president 2 years in a row and one of the most popular kids on campus.
He had lots of different friends, lots of different varieties of people that he hung out with.
I mean, everybody liked him.
And from sports to theater, he did it all.
He had played football throughout high school on 2 state championship football teams. He was very involved in theater, always had a very good supporting role in their fall production, and he had just gotten into 4-H speaking. He finished 10th in the state.
You must have been so proud.
Oh, yes.
But on Thanksgiving morning, Thomas's proud mom just wanted him home by sunrise. They'd driven nearly every street in Canadian. Soon, the search was airborne.
We flew around the train tracks, flew around Lake Marvin.
Christian's dad owns a helicopter business. She scoured the ground while he piloted the chopper. When they reached the eastern edge of town, Christian spotted the red SUV parked under some trees.
My dad and I were trying to see if Thomas was in there. He kind of shielded me away because he didn't want me to see what was in the car just in case.
But inside the SUV, there was no trace of Thomas.
And it was found right here directly where I am parked with my vehicle.
Shortly after it was spotted from the air, deputies on the ground had it surrounded. The truck had been abandoned on a dirt road that leads to a water treatment facility. A window was down and the doors unlocked.
No sign of a conflict, an assault, an abduction. Nothing to suggest any of that.
In a town with no murder rate, many thought the same thing.
Within minutes after the car was found, my husband received a call from the sheriff saying that they believe Thomas committed suicide.
Was that along the thought process of maybe this was a suicide?
You know, we haven't really discussed suicide that much.
The family said at one point you said perhaps it's suicide.
I have never said it was suicide. Never have.
But at the time, Hemphill County Sheriff Nathan Lewis did tell the Canadian Record the teen, quote, could be suicidal. However, that soon seemed unlikely.
You know, most suicide victims want to be found.
And despite days and weeks searching, Thomas Brown wasn't found. The water treatment plant was drained, the nearby 63-acre Lake Marvin sonar'd, and the Canadian River searched into Oklahoma. Every search came up empty. Then finally, a clue.
I couldn't tell you how the backpack got there.
2 months after the truck was found abandoned, Thomas's backpack was spotted by an oil worker about 4 miles away.
I'd say 6 to 8 feet behind this tree here, behind the sign on the fence.
It was on the other side of a barbed wire fence along the road that leads to Lake Marvin.
It had to have been placed there after the fact because they searched that area. They searched it up and down that day and days after.
Sheriff Lewis believes it had been there a while.
It had a indention in the ground where the backpack was sitting. It was wet inside and out. Pages were almost molded at that point.
Thomas's school-issued laptop was still inside but hadn't been used. And because of the bag's condition, it didn't provide any clues. And his cell phone?
We did not find his cell phone.
What do you think happened?
I believe whatever happened at the gas station. And then beyond that, I don't have a clue.
But more than a year after he disappeared, Penny Meek and detectives believe someone in their town does know.
Someone knows something.
Up next, is there a killer in Canadian? The search for Thomas leaves people living in fear.
It makes going home very difficult because I don't feel safe.
Plus, security video of what's believed to be Thomas's red Dodge Durango driven all over town in the hours after he went missing. But who's behind the wheel?
I can't get any answers.
At one point on the video, the mystery red truck goes by. Then 9 minutes later, Thomas's brother Tucker passes, heading in the same direction.